Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. I'm excited about this one. So we are working with Persephone and Hecate, and mainly Persephone. Hecate is here kind of like it's an odd thing, because the energy of Persephone, if you feel the essence of it, is maiden. And that's a really interesting way in which this is coming in. And so like Hecate's presence is kind of like guardian in a sense. And it at first it like worried me. It like struck me as kind of odd, but then I realized that we're entering into the story from a place of complexity, because that's how Persephone wants to bring her. Like, she's really cool. She's kind of like an energy that I always seem to feel on the peripheral. I feel her around a lot. And I know that she, I have a knowing with her that I don't quite even understand. So she's very easy to channel. She's very easy to work with. And so I'm surprised that it took so long, but she was very peripheral. And the reason that she's peripheral is because she has a presence, an essence that like, it is like that, the maiden at a certain point, but it also becomes something else. And so she's cool. And I'm so excited to be doing this. And I'm really kind of excited that Hecate is around, because I'm sure that she's going to be contributing, and this is kind of amazing. I'm honored to be working with her. I'm honored for her presence. All right, so let's go ahead. We're bringing in Persephone very strong though. And so let's do this. So Persephone's energy as a maiden, the destroyer. Oh, yes. Okay. I'm excited. I like what's coming through a lot. Huh. That's an interesting term. Okay, so let's start there. And so the cards that Persephone chose, so I always let the deity choose the decks. And I'm like, I have a very special way in which like decks play a role in the way that I see things. And the decks that she chose most of them are really beautiful and like really interesting too. So I'm excited to see how this comes out. So yeah, I'm going to shuffle a little bit more, get a little bit more out here. So her energy isn't like loud. Her presence isn't like overpronounced. It's something that you have to a certain extent, just kind of like notice. Yeah, these decks are amazing. I can't wait for you guys to see some of this stuff as it comes out. Whoa! And these are obviously jumping. And so as we get into this, I'm looking at the Destroyer card. And like the thing that popped out at me with Destroyer was that in a weird kind of way, like romantic love as it arrives on the scene for the first time is like a destroyer of like the maidenhood a little bit. And that vow there is like, this is a lot that's going on that's really interesting. Yeah, Four of Wands with marriage here and oh, that's interesting. It's a holding on. So she's saying there's a type of love, Five of Pentacles. There's a type of love that tries to cost you yourself. And when we're young, like our first introduction to that type of love is often like something that demands like that you cost yourself. Something about from being a maiden into like what it means to become like a woman. There's this passion and like passage that takes place that's very destructive here around this notion of romantic love. And so with the Judge and the comic here being like a very interesting juxtaposition to the Destroyer and the vow, like an ownership type of love is like is a destroyer of this. It's like this Four of Pentacles with this Four of Wands, the marriage and the holding on, the contract. And that Five of Pentacles and that One, those are almost the same card. It's almost like the One is in light attribute and the Five of Pentacles is in shadow attribute. So that Five of Pentacles energy is like when you're behind a brick wall in one way or another that is alienating, that is isolating, that is deprivation. And the recipient of like an indifferent cruelty, and also silence and invisible and voiceless. Like, so that's that Five of Pentacles in that shadow, and the One in that ascended aspect. And like in the work that we're doing right now, we're working between the two poles, you know. And so like, and that One is that like I'm seeing like enlightenment, the version of yourself that is infinite, that is the spark that like began and is the light that is like that sparks in like an infinite. It's like a star. I'm seeing a star. Like, how do you take a star and put it in a contract? And like, so there's something here about this star, the destroyer right here. Like if you see this, I'm trying to, this card is like trying to run away. I gotcha. Like this star here, the destroyer, this star here, the One. Do you see how this is the star, this is the predator, this is the ring, and this is the vow? One which cannot be contained, which cannot be subjected. A ring, a contract, and then like a wolf, a destroyer, and then a vow. But like what Persephone is saying is like all that though, and it's a love story, like two things in your hand at once. So like this is very important that we be able to like allow her the space of her personhood. And like look at this venom on the bottom of the deck. The poison that is like, there's something, yeah, there's a poison here. I guess we're meant to see that. We're meant to see something here about a poison. And as it was like, a poison was like shown to me, like just like it kind of jumped out as an energy that sort of shocked, like almost like a snake bite around shame. And so like when we think about her saying like, don't deny that there's two things that are being held in the same hand. Do not take that. Don't take the assault and the enslavement and like my heart's wisdom. Don't force them into the same, like they're two things that happen at once that are contradictory. She's like, it's not about the contradiction. She's like, it's about the complication. And she's like, I invite you to begin to expand your like horizons and your perception to look at everything as if it's a living complication instead of a problem that you've solved in your mind in relationship to. And so like this destroyer here and this vow and the One and the ring and the venom and like everything that we're looking at, there's also the Judge in the comic. And she's saying the Judge is like comically like false, comically inaccurate, comically impotent, comically weak. And she's showing me this very intense vision that I had in some energy like work that I was doing. Oh, it's gross. I don't know why they're wanting me to show it. There's something that happened that was kind of interesting in the work that I was doing this week. And I didn't know that I'd ever be talking about this because a lot of the work that I do in meditation, I do in like, this is me and like what the Christian like prayer closet is. Like when you're in your, like when you're in that holy place by yourself that you never talk about between you and the divinity, that kind of a spot. So I've never had anything that like I've done in that workspace like filter into this space. So I'm very interested to see why this is coming through. But I was working in like in the vision plane, and I was untying knots. Like I was going through and I was just untying knots. And the knots were made up of all different things, like very weird organic substances. So every single time I went and like untied a knot, I would see like weird, like animal part, like it looked like what we think of as like witchcraft in the movies. And I guess like very technically, like when we go back in time and shamanism and ancestral peoples and like the onset of magic, like they were working with the body a lot. They came to understand the body like, I can't believe the biology involved in the spell work that I was encountering as I like did this untying of these binding knots, basically over like divine feminine magic. And it was, and all of the stuff like led to something else. And I was led all the way into the bowels of the Vatican. And in the bowels of the Vatican is some of the worst, most violating spell work like that I've ever seen. It was all with the human body. And I saw that once before with Solomon. I saw that human body work. Like, this is some like, you know, and like binding different aspects because they understood the correspondence and they made a symbolism, and it was so fucked up. So anyway, so I was going through and I was like untying these knots, and like one of the visions that I saw was like, as I was untying these knots and what was tying it, it was like this like blood-covered emperor in like in a prisoner box, like bound in a prisoner box. Like, it was isolating. It was just like it looked like a tomb, like what the inside of a tomb would look like. And it was just like an obesity at a level that was not about body image or anything like that, because it was symbolism. And like covered in blood, which meant violence, and it was a cannibal. And then, this is scary, I know, but for me, as a symbolism eyeball, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not a living, it's a symbol. So he was like eating people, just eating. All that was going on was this eating, this consuming. But the hunger like never left, and the isolation, and like it was just bland, and there was nothing to it. It was a living death. And I kept on hearing like he's bound, like, you know. So it's interesting that Persephone and Hecate are bringing that information through, because it seems so off topic. But what Persephone is saying is, like, when you have a woman's journey and you have from the cradle until the grave, and you have her milestones, and you have her over the mountain when she becomes a woman, when you have her encounter destruction, and Persephone is saying she's going to encounter destruction. It's how she's going to build herself back up consciously that's going to determine the shape that she takes for eternity. And that process is a long one. And it's one where we don't deny her many truths, her many faces, her many experiences. And she's saying, when we have experiences of heartbreak and ruin, we had joy in the journey that preceded those incidents, those moments in time. And that rather than letting the moments define us, we need to let the journey define us. But we are so afraid of the moment that we can't remember the deep belly laughter. We can't remember like the tenuous hugs. We can't remember the like spellcraft of certain eye contact that had us like following a call. Like, she's saying, like, there's so much to our journey and our story that it doesn't need to be enslaved to, like, she's almost saying like a typecasting, like a domesticated typecasting. And so with this destroyer, the vow, the one, and the judge in the comment, she's like, even though this is a grisly, brutal story, it is a joke to think that little emperor would ever like enslave me. And I don't know what that means yet, but Leslie's kind of piping in like, I don't really know yet, so I don't know if you do. So we're like, I don't know why I'm piping in. That was like a powerful moment, and I had a reaction to it. I almost refereed. That was weird. So in my body, there are some like booby traps of conditioning. I have no filter right now with Persephone because I feel not to. So it's okay if if I get involved and it doesn't make sense. I'm just narrating. So with my own experience, so with this Ursula of the Northeast and the Venom, so this is going to be like my mind couldn't, like this is going to be a curse on humanity in the form of like, this is what I was seeing. Like, all slavery is a curse on humanity. Why? Because those curses are ancient. Those curses, like, listen, those curses are like, when the curse aligns with a deity's vantage point, it holds. And so this weird thing I've been doing like going through like what looked like ancient hundreds of years worth of spell work and just unbinding. And what I'm unbinding is the man that deserved this punishment. I did hours in this trance state, felt like 10 minutes, undoing bundles in different configurations, some of them with like copper wire and shit. Like it was, you know, getting in there with like a scissor, it's hair, like, you know, and opening it up, and there's all weird configurations of like, and the Vatican was the worst of everything that I've ever seen in my entire life. So like whatever they say witchcraft might be in the history of the annals of the Oways, with the meaningful symbolic parts of the everythings, what happened at the Vatican is like a carnage and a sickness, like the likes of which I'm not even gonna pretend that we don't know what's in those catacombs of secrets. Like I don't know what these men who are guarding this. I could be on a soapbox. I'm gonna get down. I'm being told to stop screaming about that. But you know, what we're seeing here with the judge and the comic is that this is invalidated. This carnage is invalidated by like what has been here all along, what has been here all along. So this is the curse. This is what has been here all along. And this is what has been here all along. Shh. And I'm seeing like the mother in the form of like, she's covered in chalk. She's in the jungle or the forest, and she's low. She's moving low to the ground. And there's a, like every time like a breeze comes through, she like shifts with the breeze so that we never hear her because she's stalking her prey. She's like a panther. But she's covered in chalk and her eyes are bright. And she is stalking a predator with the wind. She's moving with nature. She's moving and she's stalking this predator. And so she's saying like, what is rising here? What is rising here, and this is a wisdom and a warrior, and this is also so those are wings that I'm seeing. It's the owl. So the Athena I see was as the owl, and so this warrior rising from the mother, from the indigenous. That's what I really feel like. It's like we have so much indigenous encoding, like just waiting to sort of like as I was. This was interesting as I was unbundling and untying and uncoiling, like I would feel like the corresponding part of the body just go, and it would like open that like whatever that like layers and layers of this binding, like binding after binding after binding after binding of the body. And the slavery was the curse. So like all forms of slavery lead to binding of this sick consuming emperor into this box of hellish actual hell, actual suffering, like the likes of which I've never seen. Was this beast in a bloody tomb, eating and eating and eating with no one around and nothing but like a silence and a numb, like nothing but numb hell. And the reason that I'm explaining that is because I didn't realize all that time that I was unbinding this, but this unbinding was like the mother's work in the body. It was kind of like a coherent, like understanding. And so like when we look at what is rising, like one of the first things that, you know, I'm seeing here with like the judge in the comic is the mother saying, what a joke. What a joke that all of these bindings, like all they did was make my daughters like, oh, like look at what we've created. Look at how nature has given us like these bounty of daughters. And so Persephone is coming in to say like, the first thing that we need to do in the way of reawaken the passions in our lives and the passions in our bodies and accept who we are as, like, she's saying, like, mammalian, like animal, like she's showing me the bear, right? And she's like, you know, the way that you accept who you are and love yourself and really get into the power. She's like showing me the mother, like as the wind, as being the body of the mother and getting into the power of the body of the mother. She's like, to get the fear of the mother away from you, that's lifting this curse, is to step into like the complexity and not trying to distill things down to a controllable, concise something. And like the way that you do that with chaos and in relationship and around it is almost a kind of submission. And so like we're going to find out what she's talking about. I'm going to see what she wants to get. She wants to take these cards and go a little further. So like this is going to be cool. This might be a series. I think we're doing this for a while. I can feel that in my bones as we go through this. So with the venom there being about the poison of shame, she's saying like that these phases and this complexity means that like the complexity means that there's victimization and seduction sometimes in the very same bed. And like that we need to understand that like part of what it is like reclaiming the wild self and reclaiming a relationship to nature where we are empowered and emboldened and made magical, she's showing me again like this woman, this ancient woman stalking the predator, and the way that she moves is with nature, and it never like it's literally like a lion whose ear, I can see the hearing of this animal being, and she can quiet her because she's got enough brains to know that like at what range or in what way that animal hears, because she's been watching it her whole life. And so she's saying, you know, when I stalk the predator, when you like, she's like saying there's something here about like empowered by and with nature to like make meaningful gains on that which would otherwise like prey on you. And she's like, there's something really cool here. Let's just get, yeah. So it's something with the venom being about, we'll find out. I'm getting ahead of it. Let's see where we're going. And the story of Persephone, I'm surprised that it's coming through in this way, because I was seeing it as I was sitting down, almost like a narrative. I didn't expect her fierce nature, but she told me that she was going to vacillate between the maiden and the crone as her lifespan, like as part of her like lifespan, as part of her incarnations of self. And like the part of her that is the crone is also the part of her that is what Hades, why can't I? Hades, like it's so strange. Like I can't get like that name for some reason. It's almost like it doesn't ring right. I wonder why that is. I don't know why that is, but because I've said it right before. Like this is it's almost like that's not her name to him, but like that's not her name to him. That's not her. She's like, she has a different relationship to him. Oh, so it's like highlighting that so that the maiden and the crone have a very different relationship to the role of husband. And that like one almost destroys, like one is the, like one is one role and one is the other. And like to become the other, there's like a destruction that takes place. And so she's saying that like the part of her that is the crone is also the part of her that the husband is in love with. And the part of her that is the maiden is the part of her that the husband is trying to dominate, own, keep. And so we are looking at her story, but she's kind of coming at it from the crone. She's entering with this notion of like, we're disqualifying the power of this by entering into a kind of like comfortable complexity. So the under tree, the taking root in the other worlds. Oh, that is so cool. We're doing good on time. With the beginnings, God of the sky and the ancient wood. Oh, like we are entering into her story right here. Okay, cool. It is time for more tarot cards. Let's get these. I always forget until I'm sitting in this chair that there's a whole like sound system with this particular chair. And I think it's because like I put this chair together myself a while back, and I don't know that I really used like the arm string with that Allen wrench in quite the way I could have. So there's a lot here. The initiator, the hag, beginnings. So I always see the figure 8 lately when I'm sitting at this table, and I'm seeing that figure 8 because we are talking about like the hag being the end of the story before new beginning. And I'm also seeing the seasons, Persephone with a season in hell and a season in heaven, or a season on, I don't know why that came through like that, a season in a garden, and that's like beautiful, her mother, the earth, a season in the spring and the summer, and a winter in the underworld, and like that she's ruled by seasons. So is Persephone saying like, I'm ruled by seasons, and like and like that there's something to be said for what it means to be ruled by seasons. That being ruled by seasons also means that you are in liminal spaces because you're not rooting if you're always kind of moving back and forth. And so that's where like Hecate, like almost as like from the maiden to the crone, like we see this progression. And it's really interesting because we know that Hecate leads Persephone out, or is with Persephone in that story. So that's interesting too. So with the 4 Pentacles being here and the 4 Pentacles here being twice, like when we talk about the binding, And I'm seeing that pouch, like all the ways all the ways that things were bound together, and like what was done to like represent a type of control taking. When we look at this star, this beginning, oh man, I just got so like dizzy for a second. The control taking, like I just looked at that and it like had me kind of lost for a minute. I'm gonna stand up and you won't feel it. I'll be right back. All right, and the cool thing about standing up is kind of like seeing, almost like I had to stand up to kind of see more. And so where we have like Hecate representing as the crone that is at home in the underworld, and like when we have Persephone represented as the maiden that like has to be destroyed in order for the queen of the underworld to sort of reign, there is the phase of the mother, and we see this phase of the mother as being like where the destruction of the maiden and the birth of the crone take place for like in a woman in the lifespan of this infinity. And there's something so powerful about this being seasonally ruled. And as seasonally ruled, it's also like this aspect of like Hecate as like ruling like liminal spaces, because seasons are liminal spaces. You know, Persephone as being kind of trapped into this. And then the mother as being like, I will not be one or the other. I will spend my seasons where I please, and I will not be trapped into one or the other. And that's where we bring these complexities in. And this notion that one has to die for the other is also false, because there's something to be said for like, there's this rulership of this, so interesting, this notion of the liminal spaces, like the seasons as being a type of ruler over timekeeping almost. But so where we have this star as being the initiator, so there's Persephone's and Hecate, like it's almost like this is like a lifespan journey to a certain degree. And so where we start this lifespan is, you know, this notion of like I don't know where the curse comes in. I guess we're going to get that as we go along. But this taking root in the underworld, like she's saying like this, the maiden, you know, this beginning, like she has to grow up. She's going to have to face destruction. This new, bright, beautiful life will have to face destruction, because you can't go through the cycles and the seasons without like death and rebirth. And so that's going to come. And like this god of the sky and temperance, this imposition of the liminal spaces that you of seasons that you cannot help, you cannot stop, you cannot make childhood just stay that way, and you can't nor can, not for yourself, and not for, you can't stop the seasons for yourself either. You can't keep yourself from growing old, but each season has something to like live through in a meaningful way, in a relationship to. But there's this notion of like, with the growth process, you know, this like star, this bright star is being called forward, is being beckoned into the out of her mother's home and into the wilderness. And in this wilderness, she is beckoned toward the creation of herself as the crone. So she has to move towards that destruction. That destruction is calling her forward so that she has growth and she's on that arc forward. And that's like a really weird way to thinking about it. But no matter what happens, that loss of this is what I expected life to be, this is the dream that I wanted for my life as a maiden, has to die to give way towards like the creation of this leadership, the queen of, and in this case, the underworld, this particular story. And so what Hecate is showing us, really, and this is Hecate's energy more than it is Persephone's at this point, and is this notion of like the mother is always like, has a moment of saying, I will not live without the version of myself that is a maiden. I am not going calmly, you know, my daughter is not taken from life and thrust towards the cycles of destruction that will inevitably cause her to become like me, or like a crone, or like my mother. There's such a fear in that. There's so much shadow to overcome in that. But that's where the shutting down that needs to be overcome too. And so like the shutting down of blooming and fertility at the thought of the loss of that self And or the thought of the loss of that child, you know, like this is such a important part of like what it, yeah. So this is before I, yeah, like I could race all over with this, but she's saying, you know, with this god of the sky and this temperance, that liminal spaces rule the lifespan is part of the growth arc, but it necessitates destruction and rebirth. And so you're called towards this destruction and rebirth. And like, that's this balancing, because the ancient wood is like where you root, and the page of materials is where you start on that journey, where you take that first step, where you like see the opportunity to explore something unknown, and despite the rules kind of go towards it anyway. Like you can't help but like, the curiosity is more powerful than the prohibition. But with justice here being about that, this is kind of striking me as a cycle of cycles of death and rebirth in a weird way, but like it's almost has a death card kind of a feeling to it, which is odd. But I'm also seeing this as being two sides of a face. So shadow light of temperance and justice here. This is kind of like about fairness and balance. This is divine justice in a certain kind of way. And so Hecate is almost saying divine justice and what is that? Destiny are like almost the same. Purpose, it's almost the same. Like the spark started at an impulse, and like what it was at the beginning, it will be at the end. Like what the egg is imprinted with in the way of DNA will be the lifespan of the evolving individual as it grows and creates itself. So like this is justice, like somehow, and I can't really grasp beyond that, but like taking root. You know, when we talk about the body of the mother, when we do the work that we've been doing around the body, and that this body belongs to the mother, this is in some ways, the mythology here is, and it's not mythology. Like I like to think of it as being scripture, because we divine through it, and it is given to us in archetypes that it's the syncretism. I don't know how to explain it, but what I'm seeing here with the taking root in the other world is that the form that we create in this version of the womb, this version of the mother's body, we're in the mother's body on the earth. This is her body. We were in the mother's body in the womb. That was her body. In this version of in her body, we are taking form. We are moving through the impulse that was the spark and the programming of the DNA into the actualization of that form throughout the course of its being, as was its destiny. And that this is justice, this is fairness, somehow. But that the form we take is also our root in whatever world like that form conforms to, in a sense. And so that was really profound, and I'm kind of amazed. But in terms of this, like this joke of like, you think you can hold that which is a star. You think you're going to hold a star. You think you're going to control a star. What a joke. The only thing that's being bound with all of these efforts to control is the blood-sucking, entombed emperor itself. Entombed in its isolation of consuming false perfection in the way of control. That's the only binding that will hold and even that unbinding, which has held, like there's something here that we're kind of needing to look at with that. And so, okay, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. The card decks are interesting. I do want to say that a lot of times, I consecrate card decks for divination that are not designed for that, but that's because these are divination tools, these decks. That's the nature of the way that I'm using them. And the archetypes that are on the tarot cards themselves have imbued with them that meaning, as well as like everything else that I can feel through my hands. So let's take a look at these cards, which are interesting. These are interesting, to say the least. And like, there's this weird thing, and that I'm being told that like we have to work our way through trepidation and fear around independence as like a collective. This is almost like a collective wide thing somehow. Because there's an element of captivity in Persephone's story. There's an element of captivity in the mother story. And when we're talking about the body as having been conquered, there is an aspect of the story that we're all in and that we're all experiencing with the mother that is overcoming the kidnapping, the captivity of this energy of Hades. Hades. I can't figure out why that's hard out of my mouth. And like my knee jerk is to be like, because of the nature of the accusation, you know, that's not an accusation. That's so weird. I'm having trouble articulating my problem with this energy that is Persephone's husband. Like, this is an interesting interference pattern that I'm picking up on. So compliments. Huh. Under that hand, that reception. So this is interesting. I have no idea how this is going to channel through with these decks, because they're definitely not designed for divination, but I was called to get them. So that's kind of, I sort of work on intuition when it comes to these things. So this is going to be kind of a reveal. I'll see how this works. Traits. Okay, what traits? Hidden desires and compliments. I kind of know where that's going. Whew. I kind of do. All right, let me just stretch for 1 second. Oh, there we go. Authenticity and acceptance and jealousy. Ancestors and 5 lives to live and traits. That's remarkable, actually. Defensiveness and rejection. So this notion of like this beginning, like how do we form into like this authenticity? We first have to like it's almost like we start as like a spark that is light, and we have to encounter and incorporate shadow. And shadow is like the dark matter, the divining aspects, defining the form that we take against the limitations that are set before us. And so like the nature of like these changes here, you know, we get to our authenticity. So one of the cool things that came out, like, so I did a pre-shuffle and meditation that brought out the Maiden and the Crone as 2 cards. And I was like, that's amazing. And so I thought, and that was basically when I was calling forth Persephone, and then I saw and that was the Maiden, and then the Crone was Hecate. And one of the things that she said to me is, the thing about Hades, this is weird every time I try to spit this out. I think as I keep doubting myself, because it's, you know, every single word that comes out of my mouth is like the word symbol, you know, for the otherwise like non-English speaking language. So I'm always having to contend with my own language limitations. And I don't think I've ever, like, I think I've read the pronunciation of Hades, but I don't know that I've heard much like in audio form. So I don't actually know the right way to say it. So rather than doubt myself, I'm just going to say Hades, right? Yeah. So what I'm looking at here when I see authenticity and acceptance and jealousy is that like what's going to inform who you become is always going to like entail on one way, you know, like you are you, and you're going out into the world, and there's an anticipation of acceptance, like a positive regard that is like ubiquitous. And part of this is because we think about the love that the mother has for us, the love that which brought us into the world, that light that we start with. That when the parent holds the infant, like that very like primal wish is that the shadow will not touch this light. But the shadow always comes in to inform. and to present the limitations in which those sets of genes, those sets of traits are there to work out and work through and overcome and like have an awareness of. There's an evolution that takes place with every story that is untying these karmic curses of every single trait and every single, like, this, it's not really a battle so much as it's like, it's hard for me to say, because it's like almost saying like authenticity is part of what you are as an authentic being, is not failing to recognize the sanctity and the sovereignty and the gifts and the torments and traumas of every single challenge that has shaped you. But to love yourself, truly love your body. And she's showing me welts, almost like permanent welts. To like truly love that body is to honor its enslavement as something that tried to like take the dominion over its formation, but like merely informed its, like, there's something about feral and then like domesticated, that like it doesn't matter. She's almost saying like there's an irreverence when you think about like what it's trying to contain, what the form is trying to contain in the way of like light. It can't. That's why the cycles will have their way. That's why there's always freedom and there's always reinvention. And so with this authenticity, to come into this self, you first have to encounter the shadow, and the shadow in the form of jealousy is always going to be that which opposes your growth, that which opposes your life, and that which opposes your growth and that which opposes your life does so because it wants to keep you at a certain powerlessness in a certain phase where it has an advantage. The predator has an advantage over the maiden. The abductor has an advantage over the maiden because every abductor, every predator has an advantage over, like every predator in nature has an advantage over the young and hunts the young. That's the nature of the predator. And why does the predator hunt? Because it's hungry for what the prey has in the way of life force. That's the story that's being told. It wants that life force for its life force. And so when we see that this jealousy comes in, and it's interesting because like we're talking about the nature of man. And so, when Persephone is saying, when you want to understand like all of this in relationship to humanity, and the deities are shapeshifters that take the form of humanity and have lived through humanity's evolution, just as you have and will. They're saying that like, it's very hard to accept that the shadow has to come in, that the shadow is part of the forming of the crone. And the crone is at home in the liminal spaces. The crone is comfortable in the liminal spaces. The crone is at peace with the liminal spaces. She can work with everyone in the liminal spaces without like fear, trepidation, and every other color of weakness that would position her as something that can be dominated. She can rule, and she is in leadership because she's earned it. And that is what the underworld is in love with. And it's being in love with what she is and what she's earned. That's her power. And it takes many faces and many forms. And it's why she can advise, and it's why that she knows the map, and that she can lead you through that valley of death. She is that death doula. And she's a very important role to play. And so Persephone was destined to become that queen of the underworld. And in doing so, she had to travel the labyrinth. And she traveled the labyrinth with the version of herself that was ascended, the version of herself that always was, the version of herself that is without time. And so she is beloved in the underworld as a leader, as a guide, and as one who can travel freely between the two worlds seasonally. And she's comfortable in both. Because it's her lifespan, and it has and she's saying that the arc of ascension is a arc that comes like in the afterlife, and then again at birth in the early life. And so we have these like bright phases. And then we have the valley of death that we travel through. And then we have the guides through the valley of death. And that's going to be when we encounter destruction and like the cycles of destruction and rebirth and the change that is entailed in all of that. And so when we think about this, jealousy is coming in to sort of stifle your growth, and then you having to inform against it. It is about creating like that arc of being and understanding. And that's like this notion of the ancestors' 5 lives to live and the traits. I mean, this is beautiful that these came out together, but that's also the god of the sky, the calling out of the womb, the calling out of the cave, the calling into, you know, like I'm seeing like the curiosity of a little kid is deadly. Like the natural curiosity of like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old is a deadly force. They want to put everything, they want to eat everything, and they want to jump off the staircase and catapult toward a broken, you know, scalp like head. The reason that mothering, you know, part of the hardship of mothering is trying to keep that child from being eaten by the shadow of the drive of its own curiosity and its lack of an ability to negotiate with a perilous world. So like this is like, oh, like I don't know, I saw such a cool image there that kind of knocked me out of the channel just a little bit. So this encounter with the shadow and that the shadow exists and this notion of like defense from predator. She's saying like for the queen of the underworld to properly handle like the nature and be in harmony with nature, she has to understand how the predator works. And so I'm seeing that image of the chalk, the woman covered in chalk, and like watching the predator and moving with the wind and being like, I'm also seeing the snake eating its head, which is really weird too. Let's get some more cards so that I can better understand. Oh, sex. She's saying something about sexuality. This is like a drive, actually. Find out more. Because we didn't even get over here in terms of like defensiveness and rejection. This is the ancient oak. This is being in the wilderness. This is the drive to encounter life, experience life, taste every fruit, and then having to discover that you need to have defenses against certain poisons that come to you in the form of rejection. That's good. Somebody needs to write that down. That's good. Whew. Hidden desires and compliments on the bottom of that deck too is like really interesting. Not on the bottom of the deck, over here where the curses, the bindings have informed the shape, but done nothing to affect the potency of the life itself. That life force that on the infinity symbol is infinite, will be infinite, will grow and expand infinitely, will become itself over and over again and get to have the experience over and over again with more imprinting from the universe's wisdom. So it's almost like you get to live this life over and over and over again with the wisdom gained from the previous one until you have like reached an eventuality is almost how she's describing it. And like it's true of everything that is an infinite lifespan, that you actually like don't lose yourself at all. Rather, you get to do it again and again and again with more to work with. That's an interesting thing because she's showing me an expanding, and that's she's also showing me the womb and the cell dividing and the cell dividing and the cell dividing and like forming the whole. And so she's saying that she's like, that's what it is when we talk about dimensions. Oh, that's cool. Like I just got like whiplash with physics imagery. Oh, cool. All right, let's keep going. All right, so these are like, these cards, if you're offended by nakedness, or like there's anything that like would be offended by white nakedness might be a problem. Like some of these cards are racy, and like normally I would worry about like commissions and not commissions. What is it with YouTube? I don't know. The commercials at the beginning and the end. But I don't care, because I feel like this, you know, so much of the maiden to the crone journey, like, and so much of like, there's so much to talk about in terms of the sexuality aspect, and that these cards have that quality, although both of the cards that came out so far haven't, so that's funny. Some of these are very racy, so let's see. But I want us to be able to kind of talk about this. I think it's important. like this deck is like nothing but nudity, but for some miraculous reason, like we've got the 3 cards and the whole thing that are like where the clothing is the most. This 9 of Swords on the bottom of the deck. So there's like captivity here. And so we're talking about captivity because there is a trap that is set. There is a trap that is set by romantic love every single time. Because the reason we're indoctrinated so heavily with like comedy rom-com is because we're not ever really indoctrinated with this notion of wolves, but wolves and dogs, like I'm seeing wolves and dogs, and I'm being told like depending on, yeah, she's showing like that there's a difference between wolves and dogs. I lost it at that. Hold on, let me find my way back. Sip of water. That like overwhelmed me a little bit. This notion of captivity, that the indoctrination itself is a type of a trap because it only tells a partial story. So Persephone is saying whenever something only tells a partial story, when the story doesn't have complexity, when it only tells a snapshot, when a story, yeah, she's saying when a story lacks complexity, when it only shows a snapshot, like that's a problem. She's like, that's a trap. That's an agenda. That's something that's trying to conform you to form like at its pleasure and for its purposes in advancing something. Like it's part of a play, it's part of a game, it's part of a strategy. I keep on like losing the channel. I'm gonna be right back. You won't feel it. Oh my gosh. So like I kind of had to like meditate and sit with like what I was being shown a little bit because it did really seem like a referendum against marriage. Like it had that kind of a, like, it's like I looked at that and I was like, whoa. So this notion of like but she's saying like step away and like enter into the complexity of this. Because the nature is a bargain. The nature of like this agreement here, you have to like this strength card, she's like catching a wild boar and holding onto it with like all the, like she's taming this, like she's catching it with her bare hands, she's catching a wild boar. And this notion of like jealousy comes in when we think about competition. And authenticity is like, so becoming who you are, there has to be some aspirational focus. There's something, you know, you start as the spark, but you have to sort of like go through cycles after cycles of death and rebirth, you know, new life and then destruction in order to sort of like form in a way that like Hecate is saying like the ruler of the underworld and or the ruler of whatever world you reign over is the dominion of your lifespan. And she's saying that like there is no rival with that, you know, but this notion of like these cycles is there's something competitive happening. And so part of what competitive thing that is happening is whatever it is that needs to be like caught and tamed here in relationship to, and these cards are like the sexuality cards. Yeah, in relationship to sexuality, like what needs to be reckoned with, what needs to be dealt with, like how does like whatever this process of trying to like handle the boar, the wild boar. I mean, I don't, you know, that's basically what we're looking at here. Yeah, this is interesting. Like I almost can't like look away. It's like a game. And I see something about like taming, domesticating. So like it's a strange dance. I'm seeing this dance go back and forth, that there's a seduction in the competition. There's a seduction in the dance, and I'm hearing mating rituals. Mating rituals, like look at every single species. Every single species has like a mating ritual that involves like extravagant weirdness that no one, every single species has its own dance that it does. And so it seems like humanity does a kind of like these, she's saying the maiden is when the maiden awakens to passion, pleasure, this part of like this note, there's this aspect of jealousy that comes in, you know, within that awakening and in that field of awakening. And whatever this taming sort of situation is, it's going to be like the opposition in which she like came up, the opposition in which way this awakening occurred. So Persephone's calling it like a sexual awakening, the opposition to the way in which the sexual awakening occurred. And so what we're looking at, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So we're looking at here in terms of the Knight of Pentacles, again, one step at a time. Like what your ancestors want you to do is, and that's why I'm seeing ancestors, and I'm seeing them kind of like come in around us in the way of support, is saying like your stories are more complicated than you realize. Cycles of domestic and enslaved and bred, and domesticated, enslaved and bred. I'm seeing it over and over again. Domesticated, enslaved and bred. So we've been, and she's showing, and then divine feminine aspect of divinity, like where this lifespan is, like where the divine feminine aspect of, like, this is, like, I'm just having a moment because I'm seeing these cycles of domesticated, enslaved, and bred, and it's very hard to look at. So, you know, what your ancestors are sort of coming in to say is like, this is much more complicated in the unbinding, in the undoing than you realize. And so have some compassion for yourself when we challenge the notion of a binding around something as like wild as human sexuality, that as it's like natural kind of, and I don't know what this means. Like as Lisa Lee, I'm like actually feeling like a lot of resistance in myself to like this territory a little bit. So the ancestors, the 5 lives to live, and the traits here is this notion of like the complexity of like of all of that needs to be, can be dealt with in the form of like, this is really hard for me. Hold on. I just have to be like slower a little bit, maybe. This is a horrible experience in a lot of ways. I mean, because it's coming at me as being like, I'm thinking about, I'm seeing from Persephone's point of view. You see somebody who's like curious and excited. You know what a crush is? You know what I mean? You can, seeing from Persephone's point of view, I'm seeing that like Hades is very like attractive when he presents himself as a young man. He's beautiful. Like how, and then he pops up in like the shadows. Like I'm seeing a field of like a wildflower field, and I'm seeing the like the you know when you go into a forest and there's like a lot, like the tree line starts where the tree line starts, like I see Hades like peeking out from the shadows, and he's, from that perspective, he's hot, he's appealing, there's like an allure. Like how can you not feel that rush of excitement? And like, so I see Persephone running up to kind of like the, not like, I see where the edge is of this like tree field, these, you know, where the tree line starts, and I see her in this like picking the flowers. She's in the field with the flowers, and this is like a daily occurrence, and she gets older. It's like year after year, and it's a daily occurrence of her getting ever so far towards that tree line to see him ever so closer, and like the thrill of excitement, like in her whole being at that moment. It's like a crush when you lock eyes, you know. And the bravery that it took her, and all of the belief that it had to take her, and all of the hope that it had to take her, and like bravery really, because that's a forbidden zone. And then I see her like as she gets close enough, and she's got this beautiful like light, like the sun is on her face. She's grinning like with that sparkle-eyed look, like, you know, when you see someone in love, or you've been in love, and like it's almost like you're drunk on it, and like this just drunk on love, like drunk eyes with this love. And she's walking towards him with this fine, like the day has come. They've been talking to each other from like 6 feet away for ever so long. And she's finally like going towards him to like experience like this enraptured, like holding embrace, to have that beautiful kiss, like that long awaited. And he like snatches her. And it's a horrible experience. You know what I mean? So like, that's really hard to look at in light of this card. That's really hard for me to look at. But in light of this card, this is a very different card, because we are talking about human sexuality, and we are talking about this aspect of human sexuality where there does seem to be like, oh man, like I can't look at this. I'm sorry. Like this is hard. There's a predatory nature to it. I don't know how we reconcile that at this moment. I'm going to get a little bit more. I'm going to get some more cards just because, I can't, I gotta get a balance. I need some balance. This is actually hard for me to handle in my psyche a little bit, because what we see here with that 9 of Swords is like, this is a horrible experience of captivity. But there's also so much insane seduction in this card as well. And like, it's so hard for me, like as Lisa Lee, to look at Persephone's perspective on this and not feel incredibly challenged, because it's kind of like it's almost like there's this part of me, and I guess it can be described as a self-hating part of me, and I think it can be described as a self-hating part of all women in one way or another. I think we all have this moment where like there's been like a horrible thing that's happened, and you stayed a minute too late, or a day too late, or an hour too late, or years, like why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you think better? Why, and so like I see that here. But I also see that like therein lies the staying and the season of the staying, and what it means to be within the staying, what it means to be within the captivity. Like within that captivity is an experience, and it's Persephone's experience, and it's Mene's experience, and then there's a forbidden to enter that ground with any perspective of power, to forbidden to enter that ground with any perspective of compassion, forbidden to enter the ground of like this very particular story, of domestic violence, is part of Persephone's experience, and therein there is the period of staying, and the meaning found in that, and like that's denied, because to be a survivor, like there's this notion of in taking I'm seeing the position of the survivor, I'm seeing the position of the victim, and I'm seeing this as being like a life force that is that is imbued within the victim is this survivor, and it transforms. It's a life and death cycle, but both things exist in the same body for a very long time. Both things are true, and both things can't be denied, and one doesn't have to beat up the other. One doesn't have to dominate the other. And like both voices and the aspects of both voices, like as they merge and they come together, form what's informed and then formed by that experience. And the integration of that is like, pivotal for growth in a way that is gonna like, yeah, wow, oh my God. Sometimes the information comes through like so hard. Let's have a sip of, I would need a sip of my tea here. So taking root in the other world almost seems like this journey from childhood into the form that you like, that is your arrival almost. And it's not really an arrival, it's a beginning and an end. It's like so interesting. Like I'm blown away by the power of this channel is, I don't know if you guys are feeling it. Comment. Like this is always a journey for me. Oh, there's a card that's kind of like peeking out. Let me move this up so you can sort of see. There's something here that's colorful that I must have missed. Oh, these two. Oh, this is from a completely different deck. Let's see what we've got. Oh my gosh, that's powerful actually. Are there any more of these cards in here? I'm kind of amazed that got mixed in. Sometimes that happens because I use so many decks and I get really tired. But this is perfect with Judgment on the bottom of the deck and these two cards being from a completely different deck. 10 of Emotions, 10 of Cups, and 7 of Inspiration is like this defense of your fulfillment and your capacity for fulfillment and your capacity to hold love. That in all of its like I see love in a spectrum of ways. Your capacity to hold love in every kind of a way, and this notion of like this worthiness almost with this judgment and related to the body. So the body is like inherently, what informs your form and what calls you forward to form and like, advance in these like various ways of growth is like this, oh my God, I'm having a hard time with this. Like, when I'm seeing a death and rebirth, and when somebody has been subjugated and kept in captivity, that's kind of what I see when I see domesticated, enslaved, and bred. And whenever I see that vision, it's like, oof, really, really hard to look at. But what informs our form is this aspiration. This aspiration is holding hands with our conditioning, and our conditioning informs like our desires. And so something came up in Create Space about that the beauty standard still exists. Like you can go out and be like, no, I'm totally happy with my everything that I am, perfection, and I'm going to shine like the top of the Chrysler building with all that is my, like every part of me is an ancestor that survived to tell me about like the trait that I've inherited and all that it entails and what it means to be perceived with that in the world, because they too had this experience in the lifespan. Like they're informing like our trajectory, like our form informs where we're going. The form that we're aspiring to is like what constrains it. And I'm seeing a birth canal. And so it's like another birth canal. It's like a painful process. To have so much hope, to want to experience yourself as beautiful, to want to experience yourself as adored, to want to experience yourself as love. I'm seeing all of these cups as being different characterizations of love. And the defense that has to take place here with the Seven of Wands, this holding open the door, creating the opportunities, being let in, being let to form in the way that your vision would have you like form, and then being constrained by the reality of what your form actually is. That's where this acceptance comes in. And there can be jealousy about not being able to be in the form, you know, that we're trying to get. But there's also like ways in which other people's jealousy for having whatever form we seem to have tries to, so there's like a wrestling and trying to defeat this. And so when we recognize that like what we are, our form, the traits that are us, the body that we are, the way that we look, that this is a different kind of beauty. This is a different kind of journey we're taking with this acceptance when we're moving out of comparison, which is characterized as jealousy, as a trap. Because when it comes to entering into a contract that two people will be in partnership for their entire life, their whole life, what is the loss there? What is the gain? The gain is somebody who's going to help you and be there no matter what. Because it's contractually obligated. No, because you are looking out on the landscape of forever from a young person's point of view. Forever looks really daunting and really scary, and like a horizon of chores to do in order to survive it. It's like being out on your own. Like when we get to the vantage point of what it would mean to be an adult by ourselves, we immediately want somebody to sign on the dotted line. There's two energies that are willing to go into contract. It's a strange, she's saying it's a strange thing here. And it's like when Hades like grabs her, it's like, I'm coming here for love. And he's saying, and I'm coming here to make sure that you are now mine. And that I don't have to do this by myself because I'm too scared to. And your field looks way better than my dark forest. And I want some of your light with me. Your light is now mine, and your field is now mine. It's conquered. I want it for me. And so this is a journey now that she's kind of embarked on. And when we say that she's embarked on it, with her are her desires, the ones that she didn't tell anybody about, that she's been running up and down in this field for every single day for like years, getting so far, and then like giggling and then running back again. She didn't tell anybody about this. Nobody knew how long she was gone too many hours by herself. These hidden desires that she didn't understand what sparked her to be so drawn to this person. So the poison here is like when we have shame. When we have shame about the trap that we've walked into, we have no way of communicating that pain, that feeling from the place of she did this, she walked over, she stepped into that captivity. She was operating on desire, hidden desires. And the compliments like that were like, and this was, you know, this is kind of like the nature of the trap, and that this is over judge and comic means that to have shame over walking into treacherous places in response to desire, she's saying like, you know, you shut down desire That's why we have to incorporate seasons. Like, like you can't shut down desire. That's not letting the maiden die. Not letting the maiden be captive to the cycles in a way that depletes her of her sexual value or her like passion, her vitality. There is an arc here where she goes from when she it's funny because like Hecate has been saying like what Hades very naturally like loves that which is in decay in a certain kind of way, that which is at the apex of its death cycle is also like what he considers the most attractive, which is like so interesting because it's like she's saying like the queen of hell has her position and her dominion because her attraction and her seduction is not bound by cycles. It's a kind of defiant like relationship to the cycles that says, I've been there before, I'll be there again. I'm owned by no limitation that is placed upon me. I move through the cycles, I shape shift. And this notion of dogs and wolves, which was really hard for me to get to because it was related to captivity. She's showing me the arc between wolf and dog. And she's showing me that like, that they thought that they were domesticating, enslaving, and breeding us. That Hades thought he was domesticating, enslaving, and breeding Persephone. And like, actually like what's really kind of horrifying about the story as I go into it, and I'm being given the liberty to share, because she's saying shame is, you can't talk about the atrocities. Unshame is the atrocities inform who I have become and what I am and where I'm forming and what I'm working through and how I'm like now aspiring differently or in a new way, in a new birth, in a new incarnation of myself, where the old life is dead and the old hopes with that life that didn't actualize have to die too. And the new hopes that are being born have no relationship to the old life. Oh, I just like, sometimes I lose track as I'm like sort of going along. So this notion of captivity, there's this journey starts here. I think I lost something, but I think it'll come back. This journey starts here. And it starts with like, gestures of kindness sometimes. Like there's the complexity means that there's a kaleidoscope of situations, moments in time, experiences, and that like it's a seduction. That there's even a seduction in the violence, because I see in this captivity, there's also pleasure within the captivity. And that's not saying she wants the captivity or she's accepting the captivity. It's saying that like the shaming that comes in is discounting Persephone's capacity for creating the part of herself that is not domesticated, enslaved, or bred, but rather dominating the cycles with an irreverence that is my seduction is where my being able to rule over you comes from, because they're infinite beings. You cannot kill me. You have to negotiate with me, and you may start with an advantage because of your old age. She's talking us like Persephone to Hades. There's an advantage. She didn't know that she can't just run up, giggle, and run back for like 280 days and like then go in for a kiss and this is over. Like she had no experience of being captured before. There should be no shame. But within captivity, before it becomes clear how you take dominion over captivity, and so that you are not the captured. So, and I'm seeing that woman in the forest that is hunting the predator, because she was its prey, but she's now going to make it her prey. And she's not making it her prey because she has to destroy it like some kind of warlord, because she's a divine feminine. She's going to domesticate that wolf into a dog. She's going to transmute and transform it. And yes, it's going to fight against this. Yes, it does not want this. But if harmony is to be had, the predator must be domesticated. And the attention and the binding of the wolf to domesticate and enslave and breed the divine feminine, has resulted in their becoming dogs from wolves. And I don't understand how yet, but I'm looking at it. And like I'm seeing this emperor as being something like a pet, reduced to just eating. There's nothing else in that emperor's world but the taste of flesh. That's it. There's no other color. There's no other feeling. And all that does is it only satiates him enough to numb him. But the hunger doesn't end. And the hunger is for connection. And those that breed for compliance are not able to connect. Because compliance will never be connection, no matter how hard you try. And so when you have a contract that forces compliance, it will never be connection. It will never service in lieu of connection. You can have connection and a contract if you feel like it, if you want to make one for shits and giggles. Because what that connection is what keeps you together. That contract doesn't do shit. But it does force compliance. If the connection goes away, then there's compliance. But compliance will never be connection, and the hunger will always be for connection. And so there's a long road is that discovery. And it's a Faustian bargain of both partners to say that landscape is really daunting. I don't want to do it by myself. I especially don't want to do it myself, if I'm pregnant, and it's a bargain. But it's also a trap. Because what are you rooting in? What do you root in a contract that says, if the connection goes away, you have to come into compliance? You get somebody who is there to support you in a joint venture, and that joint venture might be kids, and that's completely good. That's a good idea. Make some kind of a contract about joint ventures. Joint ventures should always have an agreement that both can rely on returning to. That's a kind of binding that is not permanent. And it's weird that this is coming through. But so when we look at the nature of domination and submission and contracts, being dominated and being in submission and dominating by contracts, this is a spell binding. That's all. It's not scary. But it would have been what would have been considered in the ancient world when you put something on paper was to make it binding like a spell so that it held in life and nothing that would break it because it was you couldn't leave because it was already bound. And I saw I was untying all these knots, and inside all of these pouches was there was these assortment of things that were configured in a certain kind of way for this compliance to be enforced. And so they're saying it's no different. It's a magic. But watch the magic that you enter into. Because it's the connection that you're going to always want. And so you're both signing a bad deal. Partnership in ventures, it's weird because it feels so ungrounding for me, Lisa Lee, to hear this, because marriage seems like something that you want to ensure that you don't have to be like a lonely, grandpa or granny. But she's saying, no, it's about independence. And what it means to step into independence is not to sacrifice partnership. It's to sacrifice compliance in relationship to other, I'm seeing stars in the sky. Because there's this notion of as you grow and become yourself, you're rooting, you're putting your root system in the ground. And you can't put your root system in another person, nor can another person put their root system in you. You can grow alongside each other and create in harmony with each other. But that's because the connection, it's like what's fueling the connection is what's fueling the connection, like an agreement. So she's saying it's all captivity. All of that is captivity, and it's dual captivity, and both people are being captive. So that was a lot of words for me to sort of get to this notion of whether you are the oppressor or the oppressed, like you're both in captivity. And that doesn't really leave anyone off the hook. Like one is definitely like in a position that is like, that it's predator to prey. It's always predator to prey. And all hierarchical systems are predator to prey. And when we're able to, you know, she's saying like authenticity is not accepting that this is the way that it's supposed to be, because you're too, she's showing me evolved to need like a system that mimics nature at such a fundamental level. Because it's not that you're separate from nature, it's that you are conscious, therefore you produce coherence, and coherence over the body of the whole is like the synapses that hold the mind's capacity to make sense of things. And so that which is in coherence with nature understands that a system of predator and prey between the sexes is no longer, this is captivity. And a system of predator and prey between brothers, like this is just captivity. Like we're able to identify what captivity is. But being able to divest from captivity is also divesting from captivity structure and building something completely new. But that's like the theory, that's the philosophy. But the practice here involves us bringing in a level of complexity, you know, within our own hearts and minds about the cycles that are a part of what we are and what our limitations are. And they're not really limitations. They're meant to be overcome as like in the flow with the universe, in flow with creation, in flow with all of the forms that you're meant to have at your disposal infinitely for development, like of your God and goddess self. And so when we come back to this notion of hidden desires and complements, like the desire to be desired, the mating games, the mating, there's always mating things that go on. Like she's showing me she's showing me the evolution of like the mating dances and songs. Like I'm hearing birds, like each have a call. Crickets I'm hearing. She's saying there's negotiation and development here. So there's hope, but the poison is the shame around evolving sexuality. Also kind of calls in this notion of you want connection, you don't want compliance. And a contractual agreement has like some kind of, I can't get away from it because I'm sorry, like it's hitting me really hard that the structure of marriage is considered, like I see that as like part of like him grabbing her into the underworld. But I also see the labyrinth that she travels through in the underworld with him has love in it. It has creativity in it. And it's part of where she gets her strength and her ability to become the queen of the underworld. And she rules like over all that. And she loves her capacity and who she is and what she's become as that ruler. She doesn't hate who she is or what she's become. She has no shame in the journey that led her there. That journey is her life story that belongs to her. And she doesn't want anyone taking, like if you take these snapshots, like you're diminishing like the value of every moment, including the seduction of that mating dance between two seasons. And so she's saying the span of a lifespan, like the span of a love story and the span of a lifespan they're not always synchronous for a reason, because domesticated, enslaved, and bred, that requires a certain type of partnership in order to enforce that. Like she's showing me that the structures enforce the structures. So the structure of marriage enforces the structure of local government informs the structure. Like I see the whole structure coming up, and like this notion of like, oh man, this is so hard to look at. Yeah, I thought with Persephone, I really thought we were going to get a love reading, and I was kind of hoping we were going to get it. And she's saying we kind of are, because like part of this is like your love stories, all of your love stories, the love stories that were like beautiful, the love stories that had like, they all had like a lot going on. Like she's saying like part of what it means to be able to speak openly without shame about our journeys, to have the full range of expression that is praise of our life, is to be able to say, I stayed, I was seductive for all of these reasons. And yeah, he hurt me or she hurt me. And I came back. And there is comedy to that judgment in a way. Like, you know, we do see, like, I'm being shown the TikTok where they're making comedy of like, he did this and I stayed. He did this and I stayed. And it is funny. And she's saying, this is what we're being invited into. You invalidate the strength of that experience over your life. You invalidate the tyranny over that experience of your life. When you recast yourself as a developing heroine, hero, instead of a trapped slave. Because your destiny is always freedom. And so the journey of what gets you from that moment of captivity, that moment of conquered, into dominion over all that sought to conquer you, dominion over all that sought to overwhelm you and hold you against your desire and your will. All that wanted to keep you from rooting in your own power and domesticate you to rooting in what it could give you or what it would give you on these Faustian bargains, on this compliance, instead of in this connection. Because the trap is, here, you're coming for connection, but I'm going to give you compliance. That's the trap. And because and so she's saying that, you know, when we think about our hidden desires and we think about the shame that comes to, you know, when we are in captivity, the shame that comes when we want to leave captivity, the shame that comes when we are out of captivity and we miss the person that was our captor, or the shame that comes when we look back on a period of abuse and realize that we didn't save ourselves because there was some quality of, or vortex of there was either seduction or there was complacent. Like there was some comfort, there was some story working itself out that you weren't finished with, that doesn't make you powerless, but makes you in the process and in the grip of something unimaginably destroyer. Prey. By way of a promise for connection. That wasn't in heart, that had poison. Because it was trying to take that which cannot be captive. You have no rival, you have no captivity that can hold you without having a rival. No one has a rival. This doesn't make sense. This promise to hold this light in this space, this vow, says you won't have to grow alone. You can grow within these confines. And that's a manageable expectation for somebody who is looking out on the horizon of a future saying, oh, this is too hard. Like this, I can manage this, but this is a trap. This is a promise that ends up being a trap, because you are going to want to grow. You are going to want to expand. You are going to have this experience of yourself. And that should not cost you the desire to be desired. It should not cost you the desire to be able to feel admired. The hidden desires and the compliments card is really interesting here, because the question prompt underneath is, what are people always complimenting you on? How many of you when you're in the daydream space, which I call that daydream space like your magic realm, where your guides still have the power to instruct you and teach you and talk to you. It's a trapdoor into that like unconsciousness. It's basically like you can dream from a position of like, oh, I really want to do some work on dream science one day, because I think waking dreaming is really, really powerful magic. But how many of you have like waking dreams of compliments, appreciation, a place and a space and a world and a type of receptive audience that sees the way that you want to be valued, the way you want to be experienced? And why would there ever be shame with anything like that? That's what the venom is. The desire to be seen and experienced and loved and adored and valued and fairly, and like to have like a feedback loop where you're able to see yourself through others' eyes with like positive regard, why would that be a hidden desire? And the prompt under the hidden desire is, what hidden desires do you have? What realm of fantasy exists that you are condemning with shame in one way or another? Because this is the one that you're dreaming about when you think about what you want to inform yourself into. This is the aspirational inspiration that comes with the blueprint of your being that says you were designed not for domestication, enslaved, and bred, but to shine the star. You were designed to not be captive in any way, to have no rival, and to be high above and admired. That's what you're designed for. The venom is and that can be in a range and kaleidoscopic ways. It's that this 10 of Cups, like that you have to defend your desire to have an experience of the fullness and the satisfaction of connection and all of these, like, the compliments, in the way of compliments and appreciation. That does not have to be in like one sexual region. But when we look at what it is to have passion and to desire and aspire and inspire and be inspired by that desire, to have that vitality, to tap into that creative capacity, first we have to be able to not be shut down by the maiden and the cap, like our desire to be for connection should not be, the cost should not be captivity. That's the trap and the trick of it. It means that we then turn on our desire to be desired because it just causes captivity. It just causes compliance. That's not the outcome. And so, when we take a step towards life, when we take a step towards like moving into this space of like it's like actual self-actualization, but I'm hearing like sexual self-actualization. One of the first things that we have to realize in terms of rooting is we root in ourselves. Like, I look at how she's in this comfortable home. She's rooted in the comfortable home with this dude who's like behind her, crouching, ready to grab her, and like is predatory. And she's stuck in a prison. I feel like she's in this prison with this rooted into a prison that keeps her with somebody who's like lurking. I mean, and like I'm saying, like, I'm seeing this as being something that like causes friction, like in like this compliance of this person saying like, my soul wants to expand. I want to be desired. I don't know why I should have to feel shame about that. I want compliments from a lot of people all the time. And I don't know why I need to have shame about that. I don't know why I have to live within the limitations of like a dream space that there's no room for me to like root as an authority in the space of the world that I inhabit in and of myself. Instead, I'm domesticated by an enslaving structure that wants me to have partnership for the purpose of this template, rooting into this template that's actually a prison. But there is a seduction to it. The trad wife seduction and the religious dogma seduction are very strong, and they're the same. They're the same. It is when you're looking out on the landscape of forever, the seduction of religious fanaticism and the seduction of being a trad wife, stepping into that story, being like, that's a trap. It looks really appealing. You run up and you giggle and you run away. But why is it a trap? Because you're looking out on the horizon of forever, and it's too scary and daunting to think you're going to go into that wilderness by yourself. You feel like you can't do it. I'm hearing someone crying and being like, I can't do things by myself. I can't do it by myself. I need help. I need help. I need help. Like a mantra. I need help. I need help. I need help. I need this. I am not enough. I am not enough. I am not enough. I am not enough. At 5 of Pentacles, I am not enough. I am not enough. I am not enough. It's a belief. It's a belief that calls forth wolves. And so how do we protect ourselves? So that it's not about the shame of like, I wanted someone with me. There's no shame in I want somebody with me. That's part of the desires to be complimented in life by the presence of someone else, experiencing things with you so you can report back to each other and have ideas and conversations. And you never have to be by yourself. You never have to try too hard. You never have to go through the awkward experience of being new again. because there's just somebody with you, and there has to be no work that has to go into it. And it's so nice. And that is a season that's good. But part of the seduction of being in compliance is to undercomplicate things, to make things smaller, and to deny that the complications are there is to never really grow into like an adult self. So it's like, it's a fear of the complications of the vastness of it all that creates this kind of bargain that should be for a time. You want people with you in a way that you can trust, in a way that isn't compliance, but is connection, so that you can take a journey with somebody. But that one person that you're taking a journey shouldn't have, like, there needs to be more. That's where we have this need for a village. And so what keeps us from a village is the shame. What keeps us in the shame is the compliance or the non-compliance. And what we're being called out of is to start talking about these things, honestly, with our own selves, to be able to sit down with ourselves and look at a curse of a bad relationship or even an assault. You know, like where some human became monster, and our free will, like a wolf, ate it. And years went by, and compliance turned into prison. And prison meant that there was a monster that was once a man, and that there's no way to get anywhere out of this because you've been captured. And yes, in that captivity, that there was an experience of the self that required taking dominion over. And so Hecate is saying, like, she's not married to Hades. Like, this is a weird with the name, but she's saying that his desire for her exists infinitely, but her, like, that the contract is she's like, that's why the desire is so infinite. That's why the desire has nothing to do with what I look like as I age, because in my absence, he learned that the dominion that I already held. In my absence, he learned the dominion that I already held. And all I had to do is hold it and walk away. and now my choice of what to do with his unending thirst and desire and quest for me is my choice. And the only reason that it's like so weird, because she's showing me that it's not taming somebody. It's becoming fully self-actualized. It's stepping into all of your power. It's saying, I don't need you. And that's a type of beauty that transcends the desire to capture something and hold it. Is the desire for something that is wild and free and fully its own, like, essence. It's the spark that it saw that it tried to capture, and the star that it admires that it could never truly hold. And it's the journey from one to the other. And so she's saying, like, this is for every human, every individual is divinity and has a version of their selves that is infinite, that is already divine. And that is not alone. It's in a star full of others. It's a star in a sky full of other stars. It's not alone. In constellation, it's in relationship. But it's also not conjoined. And when it is, that is a unique work of nature. But it's not something that's done with compliance and a contract. Not necessarily. Like, she's saying, like, you can use the tools that you're given to create structures you feel safe within. But the matter of human sexuality, the matter of sexuality is something so sacred, so holy, so belonging to the body that it's within, that to contractually do anything with it, it's a kind of desecration. And that doesn't mean that you don't commit to each other in ways that enforce connection. And, like, enforce is the wrong word. Let's get some cards on that real quickly, because I think that we're, like, going into This is going to be a series because I already feel it. Because I see this, I thought it was going to be something, and now I see like it is going to be something, but kind of more to a longer degree. So I'm going to kind of like, so I don't overwhelm us. Like I'm going to, like, we have a lot to think about with what we've sort of entered into here. You know, it's not a call in terms of rejecting your dream. It's to do with justice. And it's to do with justice relating to this poison. It's to do with justice related to the trap of this destroyer and this monstering over here. That's a bad spell over the body. And so we're entering this picture with a picture of a lifespan that is whole and of its own self. Persephone and like how she develops over time and what travels with her in the way of infinite self. What it means to be the queen of the underworld, and what it means to be the queen of your own underworld. Because as you move into ascension, it's because you've become queen over your own underworld. And to be the queen over your own underworld, using the she's saying with the dominion of love and the dominion of earned love. It's not that the wolf is less than the dog. It's that the dog is the wolf that is permitted in intimacy. And in that intimacy becomes its own creation. In relationship, it evolves into it evolves into a new creation. But it's still itself. It still has the same basic shape, size, and, you know, for the most part. I mean, we do have like these deviations, but it's still a dog, a wolf, and with just, she's saying, fashion. And one is permitted intimacy, and it's beautiful, and that's a miracle in free spirit. And the other is a predator. And so with Libra being about the scales and justice, we're going to leave this out. Like we're going to move into a place of justice for each other, justice for ourselves, justice for our experiences. And one of the first things we have to do with a conquered body and a conquered space is look at this through the lens of the story, you know, as the deities are presenting it with their lives, you know, the gift of their lives. And begin to take root in the other world, you know, into another worldview, relating, in relationship to relating. And this miracle, this free spirit, this freeing, this justice, you know, comes in with a universal wisdom that we're going to embark on so that we can better negotiate with these spaces that are, she's showing me like really like land that has been burned, ready for regrowth. And the roots of the underworld are still there, ready to take form in a new tree, in new life. So something new is growing here. Something is ascending, and we're really a part of it. And it's a miracle, and it's freeing our spirits. And it's bringing in a level of universal wisdom that is going to bring balance. It's going to bring justice. And so we're going to work with the body, but we're going to be working on, you know, this aspect of having better access to our desires despite our pain. So that's what Persephone and Hecate are doing with us with this enrichment reading. This was cool. I'm so looking forward to listening myself, and definitely I'd love to hear what you are thinking about it. And I'll see you guys all again soon. Sending all of my love and all of my blessings. Not all of my love and all of my blessings, but it's like all of our love and all of our blessings. Like may the collective's blessings and the collective's love be accessible to you. That's an interesting image that I just got with all that. Like I saw like the essence of love like as being a shared, as like the connect, like I saw the school of fish and like what connects them and what guides them. So like the school of fish is moving by like a system of guidance that is the love and the support of the mother. And so like, that's really cool. So like, just really beautiful vision. All right, so let's leave it there and I'll see you guys again soon.